All right, we're live. We're live. I'm Andrew.
I'm Chris.
I'm Will.
And you guys are tuning in to Printed and Pressed. And this week we're covering what book, Chris?
Thank God for Bitcoin.
Exactly. It also
and,
has
we tagged every author of this book on Twitter in the post.
I'm so sorry for my commentary in advance.
That is something I was saying we should start with,
fine.
But I'll let Andrew decide. I was going to say we should probably start with our biases towards Bitcoin, what we know, what we don't know.
Well, maybe that's what we do after the discussion of just explaining the book for a second.
Well, okay, look, it's not, I just want to, relevant to the topic. This is not financial advice. None of it is financial advice. This is a review
this
of
book
the book.
isn't even financial advice.
I'm just saying it's got Bitcoin in the title, so this is not financial advice. That's all. Go ahead, Andrew. Take it away.
All right. Well, the book, as we already said, is Thank God for Bitcoin. It has a lot of authors because this was written during the pandemic by a group that was basically doing a Bible study during the pandemic. So there's a grand total of 8 authors, Chris?
8 authors, yes.
Yeah, I will not go. Well, fine, I'll list them. You got Robert Breedlove. He's a podcaster. So he is, What is Money podcast, actually. There's a J.M. Bush, no idea who he is. Gabe Higgins, no idea who he is. There's a George Mekhail. Mekhail. There's a Lyle Pratt. There's a Jimmy Song. Jimmy Song is pretty popular on all social media. There's a Julia Tourianski and a Derek Waltchack.
Did you get J.M. Bush too?
Did
you get J.M. Bush?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I didn't know if you caught that one.
Yep. So those are the authors. This was like a Bible study group that decided to write about Bitcoin because they were also Bitcoiners. And when they were reading through the Bible, they were noticing a bunch of stuff about what money is, biblically speaking. So
they saw a bunch of stuff on computers and like, wow, how did they know about this at that time? Blockchains.
They traded on grain coin back in the time of Moses, but we will move on to Bitcoin now.
The page number for this book is only 126 pages, so it's very easy. Very easy. All right. As we already said, all the authors are basically Bitcoiners and Christian.
Yep.
That's the gist of it for that.
They're part of the Bible and Bitcoin group, so there's that.
So why did we pick this book? Well, I picked it for the podcast, and I've been trying to get Chris to read a Bitcoin book for a long freaking time, and I decided to go through the route of religion to this man. That's what I chose.
Chris has to read a book that has Bible verses in it. That's the only acceptable book.
Yep.
Or C.S. Lewis.
This is the closest thing to C.S. Lewis inspired Bitcoin booking, so we went with it.
I was going to say I'm currently reading Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, but that does actually have Bible verses in it too, and I forgot about the fact that
I was going to say, if you hate on Mark Twain, we cannot be friends.
I don't think you understand when I say that Mark Twain was my favorite author as a youth, so I will not hate on Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we have the chapters up right now on the screen.
We're going to roll through each one by one.
Yep. The first one is understanding money.
Medium of exchange.
Yep. There's the history of money, inflation, the problems with fiat money, money in politics, the moral consequences of corrupt money, how bad money corrupts the church, Bitcoin, and more moral money, the redemption of money. So that's the overall arc that this takes. You can kind of tell just by the title of each chapter. It never really goes into a technical, deep dive. This is money. This is more the
surface level,
but it's more the why we like Bitcoin concept, right? It's what is the goal behind Bitcoin, the moral purpose, so to speak.
At least the assumed moral purpose, right? Since nobody knows who actually created it.
Well, his white paper is pretty explicit on why he hates fiat money.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just saying, like, I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to know intent without knowing the author.
Well, I mean, they know a lot because of the white paper and the writings and the communications of Satoshi. But the key here is to take and overlay the principles of Bitcoin and what it allows as a moral money and bring it to why, as a Christian, you should like Bitcoin because of how it actually fulfills different Bible verses in the sense of like meeting what is demanded of money and your behavior in the marketplace as a Christian type of thing. So I don't know. How do you guys want to go through these chapters? Because
I think it
we
lays
can
out.
brief them.
I think it lays out in order a good way to learn about money, especially for somebody who has zero idea what the history of money is.
Yeah.
It kind of starts out with like, what is money in essence, right? The definition of money, right? That's the first chapter. Did you want to give a quick summary of what's going on here?
I mean, what is money? It's a form of communication of value, really. It's how do two people exchange their specialized goods in like without having it where it's like an easy to just, oh, here's an apple for an orange. Well, that's easy to exchange in a barter, but how do you have enough fish to buy a house?
Like you're not gonna spend 500 apples for a horse because what's the guy with the horse gonna do with 500 apples?
Exactly. So you need something that's going to transcend time and equate to the value that you could give to a bunch of other people and then transfer that to another person in exchange for a bigger item. Traditionally, that has always gone to the most, I guess, rare, or not necessarily the most rare, but the most stable store of value that they can find.
Yeah, something that is durable and that generally like, for a long time
not
something that
easy
we just
to
liked. Yeah, something
or
that
something
we
finite,
was pretty.
Right?
Yeah,
something with a scarcity aspect to it, so that I can't walk off and collect a bunch of rocks at the beach and trade them.
I mean, to be fair, they use shells in a lot of cultures, so that I don't know about
specific
scarcity.
shells that were hard to get.
Yeah.
Or the idea was to have a money supply, which is not easy for somebody to go off and counterfeit. Get something that's outside, because your time has value and your time spent doing something has value, and therefore that needs to be able to be stored as a value in some way, shape, or form.
The real key to this equation is that the people transacting with that medium of exchange, that is money, have a fine and defined understanding of what the supply of it is so that they know exactly what the value they're transacting is. Right? So gold was good. Gold has a relatively known inflation rate because of how much of it is mined in any given year, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what made gold pretty good as that store of value. Because, for example, glass beads were used in Africa because how did you get them? The sand got hit by lightning or whatever other aspect caused the glass beads to be made. Well, the Industrial Revolution, Europe was able to manufacture glass beads, use those, and it was not hard to make that money. So it's constantly a thing where humans have always found a way to manufacture or make whatever the money was easier. And the thing that has traditionally withstood that test has always been gold. That's the best form of money naturally on Earth.
Yeah, we haven't figured out how to make it yet. That's why.
Exactly.
Anything else you guys want to say about chapter 1 then?
Well, we kind of blended into chapter 2 there, but the key is that money is a form of a ledger. How that ledger takes place differs because, like, previously there's been cultures that have used like standing stones with inscriptions on it to say that this stone is worth this much, and you would say this is now that person's or whatever else. There's plenty of places where it's basically just a ledger of value.
Yeah, and the value has to be agreed on between both people as well.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. I'm going to bring that up later when I ask you more about Bitcoin. So.
Well, that's the thing though about the form of money. It's like it just needs to be tradable as like this third party asset in a sense. Inflation is chapter 3. We might as well jump into that. And
so that's going to need a definition because I think most people struggle with this entire concept.
Okay, pull it up, Chris. Pull up the definition.
Is the definition in here?
I don't remember.
Okay, but inflation in general, the word inflation is to You know, it's the
increase
act of
the
inflating.
supply.
Yeah, but it's like if you were to blow up a balloon, every time you add air, that's inflation. But when it comes to money, it's when you increase money to the total money supply and increase the total money supply, thereby making every dollar in the supply worth less money.
They have it right there where they describe it in the second paragraph there. Here's the general principle to begin with. The value of money decreases when the supply of money increases. Consider how the price of food, energy, water, rent, investments, and debts are all affected by an increase in money's supply. This is classically called inflation. So, all you're doing is printing more money, which then makes it where your quantity of dollars that you personally have is now smaller compared to the overall supply, which now makes it worth less.
The easiest example to explain this, I found this online lately, and maybe it was in this book too, but let's say Will has $1, I have $1, and Andrew has $1. Will exchanges a cup of coffee with Andrew for $1. Now Will has $2, and I want to have more money than him, so I print myself $2 more. Now I have $3, Will has $2, and Andrew has $0. Will's $2 is now worth less than it originally was because I printed more money to the supply, and now I have more value because I have more money.
And there's another principle to that too, Chris, and that's the Cantillon effect, which means that when you purchase something with those now inflated printed dollars, Will is not aware that they exist.
That's true, not yet.
Which means will sell you that coffee for $1, but what he doesn't realize is that you just printed those extra dollars, and now they're all worth less.
So I buy 3 cups of coffee, give one to Andrew, give one back to Will, and he's confused how I had $3.
Basically.
So.
And then he goes to try to buy coffee beans, and he no longer can buy coffee beans for the same price.
Yep.
Because joke's on you, I print the money.
Yeah. So that's really what inflation is, this whole chapter. I mean, you got to realize too, as you can see at the start of this chapter, the book constantly brings up Bible verses to kind of like hammer home the point. To tie it into where the Bible is talking about these exact principles on how different, like the whole thing about having wicked scales, for example, and stuff like that, deceitful weights. The Bible is very heavy in making it where you're a very honest broker when you're dealing with money and trade.
Mm-hmm. I think the easiest way to determine how much inflation affects your dollar bill is if you were to watch over time how much gold you can buy with $1. Because the more you can buy, more gold you can buy with your money, the more it's worth. The less you can buy with gold, the less it's worth.
Here's the thing with gold, a gold coin being able to buy you like a nice suit has not changed at all.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying that same gold coin will buy you the same level of quality of suit today that it did like 50 years ago.
Yep.
It's more so what your purchasing power is with gold versus the dollar in a sense.
You're saying how much money you can get with a coin of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you take a gold coin in every country and ask them how much money it's worth, and you do that again in 10 years, you'll be able to tell how much inflation.
Okay, Chris, bring up a graph real quick of.
I'll have to kill the screen I've got up to do that.
That's fine. Just kill the screen for the graph of U.S. inflation, U.S. dollar inflation over the last 100 years. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, let's see.
And this will tie in perfectly with the problems with fiat money. That's why which is the next chapter.
Oh wait, this isn't. Hold on. Oh, that's not even. This is.
If you think it's insane, it's probably not.
No. That's not. No. The one that I just looked at was
like 90%.
The one that I just looked at was a complete lie. So that's why I was like, I'm not going to share this one because I know what it's supposed to look like, and that was like it's propping up the current administration with the graph I just pulled up. So yeah, that's definitely not legit. Okay, let's see.
They just inverted it
or whatever. Just it's.
No, they used essentially acceleration of inflation instead of actual inflation, which is a total lie.
Well, they've changed the basket of goods that they measure inflation off of. They've done that repeatedly for the past.
I cannot find an actual graph. Drop it in the private chat real quick if you can find it, because the graph's not coming up for some reason. I've been able to find it every time I don't want to see it. I find it when I want to. When I don't want to see it, I find it easily. When I want to see it, it never shows up.
I'm looking for it, Chris. Let me go to images. I bet I'll find it. Dollar value over time. Maybe that's a better version.
Is this it?
Says overall the price increase was
purchasing. Okay, search purchasing power of the dollar. It's.
Hold on, I think this is what you're looking for. Hold on, I think I found it.
All right.
I mean, you can also use a bottle of Coke or Pepsi to determine the purchasing power. You used to be able to get it for like a nickel. Now it's.
Is that what you're looking for?
50 cents.
I mean, not really, but yes, at the same time, because it's
it's the same. It's the same graph.
It's doing it in the reverse, but like, yeah, in all time, and that was just all from 1913 to 2013, and it claims there's been over 2,000.
So wait a second. We had 100% inflation when the Federal Reserve was created. How does that happen, huh?
The Federal Reserve's creation, yeah. I hate the Federal Reserve.
Well, look, the inflation rate starts at 0 until 1913, and then the Federal Reserve gets created, and boom, 100% inflation.
The dollar has lost
oh my gosh, that's terrible.
It's like 10 cents on the dollar from what it used to be at one point. So it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Then that's the problem with fiat money. I mean, whoever has the money printer is incentivized to print, because every dollar that they get to spend at
the
full
current
market
rate.
Value. Yeah. They get to, it's basically theft. All right. Like they're coming in. You think you're speaking one language, they're speaking a completely different language, and they know that they're speaking a different language.
Mm-hmm.
So they're stealing from you in that moment and giving you a value that is below what it actually is worth.
I think we can all agree here that fiat currency is bad.
Yeah, and the problem too is it incentivizes governments
to steal,
to print instead of tax, because no one notices the printing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with taxing, everyone has seen that money and it's coming out of their wallet now. This is an invisible tax because you don't see it. You just see it in the rising prices.
Yep.
And you don't blame the government.
Which they can blame on so many different things.
Yeah, which is why you see politicians who like to blame, the greedy capitalists. They're raising prices on you because they're greedy. And it's
meanwhile the government prints their own money, and then they have to increase prices.
Well, it's like yes, capitalists have always been greedy. That hasn't changed. But what has changed is the government just keeps printing more and more and more and more money.
Yeah. And the other problem that people don't seem to realize, millennials should kind of understand this. The reason houses are so damn expensive, and the reason the stock market is grossly overpriced right now, just in general, it's grossly overpriced based on cost of stock to what the actual income and profits are of these companies. The reason is because they're assets. And the only way to protect yourself from inflation is to invest in an asset. If you didn't have a highly inflationary currency, you could just save in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing would go wrong with it, because naturally, especially if you have a growing population, for example, in a low inflation currency, it's technically deflationary. Costs are deflationary because more people, growth when population outgrows the money supply, there's less dollars to go around everybody. So that's deflationary. So each dollar is going to be worth more. But also the average, if there's another book out there that's really good called The Price of Tomorrow, everything as you get more experience producing it over time goes down in price.
No, they talk about that in the Think Out of Bitcoin book.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, all goods that are produced are deflationary.
They should be anyways.
They should be, but they're not. and
because of fiat money.
Unless it's a
money.
PlayStation or an Xbox, they keep going up price.
Yep, and the thing is too, when right now in the current system with the fiat money and the inflation, you're incentivized not to hold your dollars, which means you're forced to go spend it, and people are incentivized to try to sell you whatever they can. It's not like they're competing as much now to actually get your dollars, to convince you to spend them when you could just save them. So the quality of products has gone down dramatically in the last like 50 years.
Hey, Will, here's a good example of a deflationary product based on things getting cheaper. You know, when they produce a console and it starts the generation, they're usually expensive, right?
Yeah, that's why I brought up Xbox and PlayStation, because they went up in price.
But by the time you get to the end of a generation of a console,
they went up in price recently. That's why I brought that up.
Right. They're usually cheaper.
I know.
In this case, but you didn't lay out the facts. You just threw it out there and you waited for me to actually jump in and say it.
All right.
Dude, remember when we did the CHRILLCAST episode where we were looking at how much in inflation the cost of a old PS3 was back in the day?
It was so much expensive.
The PS3 was so expensive compared to like the
that was
PS5.
terrible. We still need to clip that into a clip. Holy
cow. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that right there is the problem with inflation, problem with fiat money in politics even, is you're incentivized to do all sorts of shit that the average person does not see. And then you can, because it's all behind the layer that everyone understands, they're not money literate. The average person is very illiterate about money. It's very easy to politicize who's at fault instead of actually having people recognize the true problem. And we kind of got into the moral consequences of corrupt money because right there, it incentivizes people to go cheaper. It incentivizes people to not have the same build quality because they're no longer having to compete with like, oh, I can just save money and be prudent, right? I have to spend it or I'm going to lose value. And it ruins the whole communication, right? Because money is a form of communication of demand and supply within the economy.
So we've kind of gotten into this chapter on accident.
Well, no, I on purpose got there.
No, I meant like we got into it before I pulled it up. All right.
Yeah, we're all the way now towards chapter 6, which would be
that's true.
Because 4, 5, 6, they all kind of blend together. But I mean, it even impacts with chapter 7 too.
Well, that's kind of a different story. I mean, I get what they're saying in here is like the idea is that with corrupt money, the church is kind of pushed to spend money now and steal. They're taking out loans, which increases the fiat money supply because the banking system is allowed to just increase the money supply at whim by handing out loans to everybody. And so the church actually accidentally or on purpose, I don't know which, ends up taxing people when they build new things, do new projects on a loan from the bank. I never thought about it that way.
They're increasing inflation, and it's not just that though. It makes it where their message is now about trying to keep as many people in the seats as possible to be able to fund whatever they've done.
Yeah.
You're very money centric now.
Yeah, I feel like that gives a rise to a lot of these new age churches where they're just trying to get people in and they water it down so much that
it's why places have become rock concerts instead of actual services.
Well, they don't even say the creeds or anything anymore.
It's to be a circus. That's why so many places it's all about the bread and games, right?
Or sugar cookies.
Or sugar cookies. That was the wildest thing, man. There was
it cannot compete. Look, but that can't compete with the one I saw in Lyle.
Hey,
it was like Kool-Aid and saltines or something.
Hey, man.
And I was like, oh man.
At least the saltines would make a little bit more sense. The sugar cookie, I thought I was about to get diabetes at communion.
That's when you toss the table.
Yeah, that's when you're poisoning us.
No, I'll tell you what. The worst thing I've ever seen at a church. I don't remember if I was physically there or a friend sent me a video, but it was a long time ago. I think I was in high school, and I was walking up to what I thought was a communion line, but no, it was you exchanged money literally for a blessing when you walked up front, and I was like, "What? Like what?"
Here's another thing, Chris, that this doesn't really get into very well, but I think it's right there under the surface. And there's another Bitcoin book that really does try to get into it. It's the Bitcoin Standard book, which I do recommend to people. But it's about the fact that like architecture has really suffered under fiat money, especially since we've really gone away from the gold standard. Look at the churches, for example, that are being built now too. On average, there's not many nice churches being built anymore.
Yeah, and also
they're all
buildings
modern.
in general. To your point, they're like all modern buildings are ugly.
Yeah, modern buildings are ugly because of the incentives of fiat money. It's pump it out as fast as it can be, as cheap as can be. There's no, we're building this to last because we're thinking long term.
No.
Everything, like, look at how often roads need to be repaired. Compare that to what the Romans built, even. What the Romans built was like 10 times better.
Yeah, well, they went into it, like you're saying, they meant for it to last. They wanted it to last because that'd be their legacy. Now we don't give a shit about anything.
Yeah, because you can just get a loan to repair it.
Who cares? Like it's guaranteed that the government's going to pay you to fix it. So why would you? What's the incentive to make it lasting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this fiat money mindset has been into projects that are just a cyclical project. Oh, we're just going to repair the road in 3 years because it puts people to work. It's not like build it right the first time and then dedicate those resources to building another thing later. It's just right there. It's a consumerism of things that were usually built to last, things that should not be consumerist. And then Bitcoin, a more moral money, and the redemption of money as chapters after this. It just gets into what Bitcoin is and how it was, how it is a more moral money. The answer to this question really is they compare it to gold, which is, I think everyone would accept that gold was the most moral money that humanity has ever had. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that sentiment, but
gold was the most moral money.
Yeah,
I would tend to agree with that.
Its only drawback was the fact that it is heavy. It's not very, transportable.
Drawback?
What?
The only drawback is that it's heavy?
The primary drawback of gold.
I would argue that additionally, it's based on location too, because you don't necessarily know if there's going to be a gold supply wherever you live.
That's not an issue though, because everywhere on this planet has value in some form.
And they could trade it for gold. Okay,
and gold will go wherever the value is. Does it give an unnatural advantage to certain locations? And does it open you up to a lot of theft? Yes. But it's also very difficult to transport gold. And because it was very difficult to transport gold, that's how the dollar even became a thing. Paper notes, which were gold-backed, had to be made because people wanted to keep the gold in a safe location and then carry something else that would allow you to redeem it without it being heavy as shit. So naturally, gold got centralized into banks, but then those banks got ridiculous power to be able to print more certificates than they actually had gold to redeem. That's a form of inflation, but really it's just theft. All inflation is theft. And then over time, nations just consolidated all of those banks into central banks. And then once the government had it, there was no incentive for the government to ever let people redeem it.
Hey, I think you missed a big point here earlier, though.
What?
What was one of the major faults of the Roman Empire?
Debasement.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's also a form of inflation.
Well, yeah, that's why, it also became a thing to have the redemptive notes, because people were debasing coins anyway.
Yeah, it's like our coins, actually, that's how much it was worth in gold.
Yeah.
But then they kept filling it with like other materials and it became absolutely worthless.
Or even something as simple as filing it down on the edges. People have always been attempting to steal money for as long as money has existed. And that is how we now transition to why Bitcoin is a more moral money. And right there is, it has all of the benefits that gold has as a characteristic. I think there's a chart somewhere online, but it's not worth pulling up. But
the comparison of the I think it's actually in the book.
Is it in the book?
I know they talk about it. I don't know.
They talk about it. I know that there's people who they have the different comparisons all the time.
I think it might have been in the back of the book. Let me see if it's in the back or not. I feel like it was in here somewhere. No, it's not. Never mind.
The key is, okay, finite supply. That's one of them. So right now, Bitcoin has a finite supply.
Yeah, for now.
Well, no, it does.
Bitcoin is different from the rest of crypto.
Supply.
There's nobody adding, like the other supplies can increase and deflate as necessary for whatever the banks want to do with them. Like Ethereum, they could add more Ethereum tomorrow. But Bitcoin is specific to only carrying a certain number of it entirely.
Yeah, for now. I mean, we're talking about the gold standard. It's the same idea.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Will, for Bitcoin, the key for Bitcoin to remember is that it has a structure of miners and nodes, and for you to change the Bitcoin code, that requires everyone to be on board. Otherwise, you hard fork it and you just have a new blockchain. You would have two competing blockchains. This has happened in Bitcoin before. So Bitcoin, there was a block size war about how many transactions you'd put in each block. That's how you ended up with Bitcoin Cash as a concept. Bitcoin Cash is another Bitcoin's blockchain. Really, it's the same. It's the same fucking thing. It hard forked at a specific juncture, and they then diverged and were now making different separate blocks. They were no longer synchronized. The thing is, everybody, when you hard fork, everyone gets Bitcoin for both chains, because it just makes it where each wallet address is still applicable for both chains. Now, the key is people get to pick which chain they're going to keep using if they see any value in one or the other, and they get to choose. And the thing is, everyone chose Bitcoin over Bitcoin Cash. Let me see. What is Bitcoin Cash even worth right now? It's a piece of shit.
All right. So, okay, how do you own a Bitcoin? Just break
Bitcoin.
it down.
Okay, for example, Bitcoin Cash right now is only $242 a coin. Like, that right there tells you everything you need to know about what it like. They were at one point 1 for 1 because people didn't know which way it was going to go, and the network effect of the regular Bitcoin just outperformed it completely.
So let's say you make an exchange on one of these blockchains. Do you retain it on the other?
What do you mean?
So let's say I have one Bitcoin and I decide to use it on the regular Bitcoin blockchain.
So there's a specific time on the, like a block, right? A block on the blockchain where that is the reference point for what wallets have what. So if you now have, let's say you had 2 Bitcoin, for example, at the time of the hard fork, you now have 2 Bitcoin and you have 2 Bitcoin Cash. It's not the same thing. They're 2 separate.
So what if I mine Bitcoin? What if I mine Bitcoin? Do I get it in both, or do I get
No,
it? No,
you have to pick. You have to pick which blockchain you're supporting.
That's the network effect. I'm very confused now.
What do you mean?
I was understanding when it was one blockchain and one Bitcoin. I understood that. That makes sense.
Because okay.
But are you telling me that the
miners choose which blockchain they're going to mine?
So does Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin Cash its own thing essentially?
Yeah, that's a hard fork.
So like
it became its own thing.
So there's an exchange rate, but they're not equivalent.
They're not equivalent, no.
And is Bitcoin Cash set up on the same style, or can that one be increased?
It's literally the same exact concept as Bitcoin, except they made it with larger block sizes, which means they can put more transactions in one block.
Is that
which,
just like an
which
efficiency
made it
thing?
harder. It was a thing to try to bring. It was a specific method to try to bring down transaction costs at the time, because that was the big controversy, was transaction costs.
Oh, this was like the whole ecosystem disaster, blah 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 blah
blah blah blah. It was a bunch of garbage, but this was a big controversy at the time, and the issue is that it made it much harder to run a Bitcoin node if you increase the block size.
Gotcha.
So what it would make it where it was harder for node operators that were just independent users of Bitcoin. That was part of the problem.
So are there two separate mining operations going on for Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, they're separate.
So there's a separate.
If you look right now, the key to Bitcoin and all of these things, right, is you can to make it change, right, to change the blocks, you need to have a 51% attack. You need to have 51% of the miners, right? It's actually ridiculously cheap compared to Bitcoin right now to 51% attack Bitcoin Cash. Like right now, it's kind of cost prohibitive for anyone except for like maybe the United States to 51% Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
And if anyone tried that, they would need a ridiculous amount of Bitcoin miners to even do it still, which I don't think they could do.
So let me ask you two questions then. I got two questions, and then maybe Will and I might understand better.
Okay.
So the incentive to be a part of the blockchain is that being part of the blockchain, your computer slowly mines Bitcoin, correct?
I mean,
it's cost prohibitive at the moment. You'd have to have a ridiculous rig for this.
I'm saying, but that was how people got into it. Was because if you get on the blockchain mining for Bitcoin, then you are getting paid essentially.
You're incentivized to mine Bitcoin because you get reward. There's a reward with Bitcoin, a miner block fee reward. Plus, there's also the transaction fee reward.
Okay, so there's
an
incentive to do it.
Yes.
And then now the incentive is if you have Bitcoin, you want to maintain this decentralized network of blockchain.
If you have Bitcoin, you're incentivized to run a node.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, a node
is different than a miner.
Okay.
You have nodes and you have miners. Nodes verify transactions using the blocks.
So as long as there's people that run nodes, Bitcoin will always be able to be a form of exchange.
Yeah.
So you're relying upon everybody else.
Yeah. So, okay, this is my problem with this. One, if the internet gets knocked out tomorrow, this is completely worthless. You don't have to knock out most of it. You'd only have to knock out some of it.
They've actually used analog to
but at that point, who the hell would try to even access this? Because who else has analog? Nobody.
To be fair, well, anything digital payments.
That's why. Well, I mean, okay, so but we're comparing this to the fiat money, and I really don't understand the difference, because this is going to go the same way. Going back to like a precious metal or something makes more sense to me because it's tangible, and it's something that I don't have.
Tangible is not where money's at, though. That's not.
It is for you. The thing is, you're having people buy into a concept where you're having a price agreed on. Like, I don't even understand how these prices are set, because how do you attribute value to this?
It's not okay.
I guess you should look at it this way. Hold on, Andrew. Let me help him out. So, from what I understand, this is what I understand. Bitcoin is a finite digital resource that is very easy to do transactions in, and it's very difficult to do any kind of corruption to it. So the usefulness of, I'm sure that somebody
for now, I'm sure they're going to figure it out.
Somebody might figure it out in the far, far future, but at the moment,
AI will figure it out. I mean, we already have spiders that are combing this shit, so I'm sure
the biggest thing is, Will, is that there's a public ledger. So if somebody does something funky with Bitcoin, everybody would know.
Yeah, we all know we're getting fucked over the inflation right now. No one cares.
That's less public than Bitcoin is.
Bitcoin's it's a lot less public. This is very public, and you can't fake a Bitcoin transaction on the blockchain. Like, you just can't.
Yeah, it's also, the thing is, I don't know, it's meaningless without a comparison to another monetary value. I mean,
unless somebody made Bitcoin the standard, then it would be different.
Yeah, if it became the standard, it's very different. The thing is this, Will, all money is really, at the end of the day, is a representation of value based on the community that has it, that is using it as the form of communication for market demand and need. So it has value because people prescribe it value. Nothing to represent things that were done. So like me saying that I would mow your lawn for like 50 satoshis or whatever, you know, like 5,000 satoshis, $5 or whatever it is right now. I don't remember. Like if I were to do that, I just prescribed a form of value to what that Bitcoin is. If someone's willing to take their dollars and give you dollars for a Bitcoin right now, they've given it a value based on not dollars, but the amount of hours it took them to work for those dollars. So the dollars don't have any value either. Nothing. Dollars have zero value. They're just paper. All right. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that prescribes value to a dollar bill is that someone is willing to give you a certain amount of labor for an hour based on a certain number of dollars.
So I don't disagree with any of these things. I just don't think this should be where we're switching to. Why? I understand what money is. I know where you're going with this. I don't think that this makes any sense. So the attribution of like the blockchain. So it takes a lot of computing power to make these blocks. Okay, and there's a finite number that can be made, and as you're mining more, it's harder and harder to do it. Yes. So I understand all that idea, but what happens when we get supercomputers in like 5 years, where it'll be an instant mine, like you'll be able to mine a Bitcoin within seconds because of how.
Well, from what I understand, the program that mines it has there's a limiting factor. There's
a difficulty adjustment.
So it's artificially adjusting itself.
Yeah. It adjusts its difficulty up to stay.
How easy would that be to just be like, to tell 51%? I mean, think about what 51% of any population does. They do stupid shit all the time, where they would be like, we should make this easier to mine, or
because the problem is no one is actually incentivized to decrease the value of their Bitcoin. It's very much agreed concept.
It'd be a self-defeating thing.
Yeah.
So it would be self-defeating to decrease the value of the dollar, but our government does it. What if
it's not self-defeating? It's not self-defeating.
Well, again, my point is like, what if they decide to actually switch to the standard? Then they would be in control of something like this.
Well, the issue would be that there would always be the ability to go to the other blockchain still.
So we would just
if you change it, it would be a hard fork. They would need to convince other people to switch over. If you change it, you need to switch over. So if people refuse to switch over,
which they probably would switch though, because if you're like, well, the government's backing this, I mean, 51%.
Well, here, let me explain what happened last time. The last time, it wasn't a 51% attack last time, it was just a hard fork. A 51% attack is to try to change what was already written in the blockchain, to try to change the blocks. Now, the problem with that would be that if you actually did it, you now just completely invalidated the value of the blockchain altogether. So there's an incentive for Bitcoiners to never do that, because you now just made your Bitcoin questionable as a store of value.
So when you say, but people would have to agree to sell their 51% of the Bitcoins.
No, it's not about ownership. It's about mining capability.
Oh, so if the government one day turned on 1 billion computers, they would have 51% of the blockchain.
I mean, I don't know what the current rate of mining is.
I'm just saying that if they were to do that,
if they were able to turn on enough miners to have 51% of the hash rate, then yes, they could attack the blockchain.
That's something I was not aware of.
Yeah, what if Microsoft decides to do this and like, well, I want this to be Microsoft.
They don't have enough, man. They don't.
There's a lot of people mining Bitcoin.
What if they have some back-end deals with Google, Microsoft, like all of them?
They don't have enough right now. Do you know how much of an effort that would take? you would shut down basically everything else to accomplish this. It'd be insane.
Well, what if they shut down the internet and then only brought it on for the people mining? Then they'd have 54% of blockchain.
It's more than that. Dude, I don't know the exact.
I'm just saying, like I think there's probably a way to do it.
It would be very difficult.
Somebody can figure it out.
This is why we need to start trading in spice melange.
Dude, it'd be so difficult.
We'll show the podcast next week. His eyes are blue.
They would be more. Okay, here's the thing.
I was like, I am the Muad'Dib.
They're way more incentivized to self-preserve their own wealth.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so all right. Let's go with that idea. So it's essentially impossible to hack. And it's
Bitcoin's digital gold. It's digital gold.
Hold on, Chris, let me finish my point. So essentially, they can't be like the 51% can't be attained. So you're not gonna be able to change it. It's gonna end at the 29 million coins or whatever. 21 million coins. So then the incentive becomes just knocking it out. So it can no longer compete. So either regulatory,
that's what the government wants to do.
Yeah, regulatory or technology-based knocking it out. I don't see this standing the test of time, because if it does everything you say and people actually attribute money and it actually is a moral form of currency, it will not last more than 50 years.
The problem is it incentivizes people to adopt it first. It is right now 100% you're incentivized to just adopt it and embrace it, because you will make a decent chunk of money by being an adopter of it instead of fighting it. So anyone who's actually intelligent is going to try to do that, whereas you'll have the dumbasses like Senator Elizabeth Warren who wants to fight it until she dies. So, I mean, she's retarded, and I think it's safe to say she is. But
YouTube, he's not actually saying that. He's making a slander, and I do not necessarily agree with the views of my podcast.
We do not condone the use.
We do not condone the use of that word in this podcast,
unless it's about fire and fire retardant materials.
Or she's if you're slowing down retarded. In music.
Really slow. All right. She's a retardando.
Can you stop with that word?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
All right, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying that, one, you would need all of the entire. You would need the entire planet, all the world governments to combine to say they're going to try to go after it. Which really, they're not incentivized to do that because it's better money than what they're currently dealing with, which is dealing with other countries that print money and inflate everything.
So what you're saying is you want a one world global currency standard on Bitcoin, huh?
Exactly.
You want everybody to have to buy and sell in one specific way.
Yes, Chris. Yes, I do.
Will's not catching on to the reference here.
Hey, Chris, did you know that was the gold standard for like?
I was making a joke, Andrew.
Okay. Will, it's no different than what happened to countries that adopted gold standards prior to countries that used to have silver standards.
I guess here's my question. So like the gold and silver standards, it is different because you can always increase that supply. So why 21 million? Why is it a magic number? And again, what stops people from we should add a little bit more?
Okay. One, you don't need to add more because
you just divide
divisible.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is that you couldn't keep dividing gold. You had to bring silver into the mix to do smaller transactions. Right now with Bitcoin, this is the first one where it's like, okay, this is just divisible.
So there's 21 million Bitcoin. There's also like smaller versions of Bitcoin.
No, it has smaller units, which are Satoshis, which it has decimal places. Well, one Bitcoin has a lot of decimal places. So, it's one of those things where
it's almost infinitely divisible.
This is one of those topics where the Bitcoin Standard as a book does a really good job of discussing it, because it explains the incentive structure of adoption as a nation state. Because for example, England and them, they adopted the gold standard really early. It helped fuel their entire conquest as an imperial power. But certain countries were very late to the party in adopting gold standards. Two of them are India and China. They held on to the silver standard for a very long time, and it gave countries with a gold standard an unfair advantage in how they spent their wealth. They gained more wealth because of how well the gold standard held up versus the silver standard. So what you have are the two developing nations, right? Economically speaking, they are late to the party as far as superpowers as for what their size as nations should have granted them status. That could easily be attributed to the way that they held on to their value in silver. The US flirted with silver really stupidly for a long time too.
They had silver dollars for a while.
Yeah, we held on to trying to keep silver as a thing for a long time. Adopting a gold standard helped nations significantly once they did it. Because you're incentivized to have the best money possible. It also makes you make the best decisions. You think with with a lower time preference, which means you think more long term when you have something that isn't being inflated away.
Correction, a moral person thinks that way. A corrupt government is totally fine with their fiat currency to continue printing it.
Well, yeah, but the problem is when you do that, you create what is basically a crazy people, a crazy society that's not thinking long term, which I think we can all agree that that's what our society is right now, a really short-term thinking.
Nobody thinks long term in this country, not anymore.
And that's because of the monetary communications. But
when you know the money you have today is going to be worth less tomorrow, you're incentivized to spend it.
Yeah, or even the fact that people don't believe that they can afford a house because it's been turned into a form of, wealth storage because the dollar is inflating away. So what do people do? They buy property. Yep. So it's been turned into a monetary asset more than a resource that people use.
Oh yeah, I mean, owning a house is a must for somebody who wants to amass any kind of wealth.
I mean, yes and no, but yes.
Yes, but yes. But
you're taking advantage of the fiat debt system by taking out a mortgage at a rate that you would never be able to get otherwise.
Yeah.
Of interest. I mean, houses though, prior to all of that, lending with the beyond the gold standard currency rates, houses were fairly affordable. Why? Because they weren't monetary assets to store value in. They were I need a house because I need shelter.
Yep.
Yeah, the comment I've heard is in the 70s or maybe before that, houses were cheap and food was expensive. And now they say food is cheap and houses are expensive.
It's both expensive.
Well, they're both expensive, and also the quality of food has gotten way down.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
especially for what we're paying.
The 70s is when we got off the gold standard.
Right, and the houses were still cheap.
Yeah.
And now they're not. Not at all.
I mean, the 70s also brought in some really terrible architecture choices. So
there's also a reason why you can buy a house in 1900 and it's better than a house that's built now.
Yeah, my house is old as shit.
Yeah.
My house is built in the 70s. Yeah, my house is built in the 70s.
It shows, Chris. I've been to your house. It shows.
Chris had to build that cave just to survive.
The cave I'm living in now in the background.
Yes.
With all the old scrolls. I'm in the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Thank you very much.
You needed to dig down deep just to find something stable.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That sounded like a euphemism of some sort, and I don't know if I should be offended or not.
All right. Well, I feel like we've summed this up pretty well. I have a question for you.
So I think we have a better understanding of what Bitcoin is.
I have a question for Andrew that you need to answer.
Talking to me or Andrew?
Okay. What?
Where do you buy Bitcoin?
Dude, you can buy Bitcoin in a lot of places now. So So you can use even the Cash App to buy Bitcoin. You can use Coinbase.
There are Bitcoin ATMs, but now I'm confused whether they're Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin.
No, they're Bitcoin. It would tell you.
Because there's one by me at a gas station somewhere.
No,
I was like, what?
They would
Bitcoin
tell you,
ATM?
They would tell you what it is.
So did they print Bitcoin out physically that you can use in some way, shape, or form?
No, it's a fucking QR thing or something. I've never used one. They just give you the Bitcoin on like a paper wallet. That's all it is.
Gotcha.
Like, for anyone who's confused, like you make a wallet for Bitcoin and it has like 20 whatever, however many seed words for it. That's how you back it up and load it into whatever the Bitcoin node is. You have a seed phrase associated.
Was it Bitcoin or was it another one of these currencies that someone forgot their password and couldn't get into it?
So it's very easy to forget your password.
What happens to that Bitcoin?
If you didn't record your seed phrase properly, you can't recover the wallet.
What happens to that wallet then? It's just lost?
It's lost, yes.
That's kind of worthless, because if I lose dollar bills, then somebody finds them.
That's lost out there because people didn't take it seriously. Early days when it was worth pennies. So, I mean, it's one of those things where all you did now was just make it more deflationary. So
True.
Thank you. If you lost it, you've made mine worth more. But no, it was a Bitcoin guy who lost the password, but that was for a what is it? The iron key things where it deletes itself after so many. So
but it deleted his Bitcoin?
Is on that, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, geez.
He forgot the password to get his freaking seed phrase. So that's why he can't redeem it.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. There's a thing to be said where you can get a little too tricky for your own good.
All right, so how does this redeem money? Okay, we've kind of talked about it, but I think the idea is, I'm going to sum this up as easily as I can, is that Bitcoin is essentially digital gold where no more than 21 million will ever be mined. And as long as there are functioning electronics on this planet, there is a way to exchange it that will be recorded on the blockchain, and it keeps people honest because the blockchain records all transactions in some way, shape, or form. It's impossible to have a illicit transaction. I mean, you can still buy something illegal, I suppose, but it's impossible to have a transaction in which somebody's getting screwed and not know about it.
As long as you wait for the transaction to be confirmed on the blockchain, you have not been screwed. Plain and simple.
Just don't fall for Bitcoin scams.
Once the transaction has been confirmed, that is a finite transaction. That you can't reverse it unwillingly. All right.
And nobody can print more Bitcoin.
No one can print more Bitcoin. It is a finite amount. The reason this is redeeming is because it gets rid of the confusion in the ability to actually place value on goods and services. It allows you to have a foundation that is solid stone instead of washing away sand, right? That allows you to actually go through your day knowing what the value of everything is, knowing what the value of that will technically be in the future. It allows you to not have to worry about what you're doing with your money. You can just put it in the, I guess, Bitcoin is like a bank concept, and you know that it's not being inflated away, right? You're actually storing your value for the future, especially in a deflationary universe. The reason this redeems money is because it now allows people to think long term. When you can save money for the future, you can plan for the future. You can make a grander plan than if you were like, oh, I have to spend it all today because it's going to have a value by next year. You can say, oh, I need this much value to buy this one thing that I have long-term planning. I can now wait for however many years to implement that plan. You're now thinking years wise instead, like decades long time frame, instead of, oh, I have to spend this now. And I think that does a lot of good for society as a whole. Now, another key thing is, besides all of the places you can buy Bitcoin, because, not your keys, not your coins, that type of thing. There's plenty of exchanges. There's Coinbase, there's Kraken, there's Cash App. There's also now, for anyone who wants to play around with their IRAs, the Bitcoin ETFs have now been approved. There's a lot of options. There's Fidelity has one. There's our 21 shares. ARK Investment has one. BlackRock has one. Where like Grayscale, there's a lot of them. All right. You have a lot of ways to buy it.
Okay. Where do you buy yours, Andrew? So in case someone wants to jump in after this podcast.
He's not going to reveal his secrets. No, I'm just kidding.
My secrets, no. Honestly, Cash App is decent right now for it. It's easy. Cash App's only doing Bitcoin. There's a lot of them out. There's a couple out there that only do Bitcoin if you don't want to deal with all the shit coins. So Swan Bitcoin is another one. Yeah. So I mean,
Dogecoin.
Principle, like all the other altcoins don't fix money. I'll just put it that way.
Altcoins in general, from my own digging into it, I have yet to find one that has a finite supply where the institution which created it cannot add to it.
All of them have creators. All of them have institutions tied to them. If almost all of the alternatives now are proof of stake, which is an extremely flawed system because it allows whoever holds the most to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And if, for example, if an ETF gets approved for Ethereum, it will basically be large institution coin. You'll basically have BlackRock coin with Ethereum because they'll clearly be one of the largest holders of Ethereum just because people put it in their ETF. So there's a lot of things there. Plus, proof of stake is paying interest in a form that is probably inflationary, depending on the blockchain.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, the main thing in my mind that, I mean, this is essentially digital gold, is that because there's a finite supply, because people have attributed value to it, and there are medium of exchange involved with it, it is essentially digital gold in that it functions the same way with far less weight associated with it. So like if I want to spend gold, I'm sure somebody will exchange gold with me, but I have to carry a sack full of gold or whatever. Probably not even that at this point, but carrying gold is not as efficient as carrying digital gold.
This is the first time that people can be their own bank and carry all of their wealth with them with their Bitcoin wallet.
And the other half of that, Will, I just thought about this. If somebody were to, let's just say somebody assassinates you for your Bitcoin, well, it's really difficult to steal that. But gold, on the other hand, all they got to do is find it. Yeah. They don't know your 21 phrases.
Is there any way of leaving that to a loved one, though?
There are ways. There's a lot of methods out there to do that.
Andrew on his last breath, transfer to Aunt
No,
Carol.
I mean there's a lot of there's multi-sig processes out there which allow you to have multiple wallets where you can give one to somebody to hold on to for safekeeping. The institution that you did multi-sig with can have one of the wallets, but it requires multiple wallets to actually do transactions with it. So it would require.
Well, let's say your Bitcoin's in Cash App. Could you leave that money in a will or something like that, like a last will and intention or whatever?
If it's on an exchange, I believe you can do that.
Okay, I think that's what Will's kind of trying to say.
I think I thought Will was asking about if it was in a
just
cold
in a
storage wallet, where I mean you'd have to find a way to give the wallet to somebody.
Put it
in
in
a way that
safe.
you felt comfortable with.
Well, it's basically like if I just gave my wife my password. She'd have it.
That's fine. There's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
Is it taxed? I'm honestly kind of confused.
Is Bitcoin taxed? It is treated like property.
Okay.
Well, right now, if you sold it, it'd be like a stock where you pay capital gains.
If you made a profit on it, right?
If you made a profit, that's the only time it's taxed.
Okay.
So
it's considered an asset, a digital asset.
They ask about it on your tax returns. You file for taxes, they ask, did you sell?
How much did you make money on this?
Yeah.
Well, capital gains at this point are only capital gains when you pull out and get
money
for it.
Here's the thing. With this, as Chris was kind of alluding to when he said, oh, someone wants to rob you and take your gold, they can just kill you and search for it. What this really means, though, is that governments no longer have that coercive power to just come in and ransack your house and confiscate all the wealth they can find in it.
Because they're just going to deflate the money.
Because they aren't guaranteed to be able to get Bitcoin from you. Like, the ability of you to just say, fuck it, and send it into the ether is way too strong, right? So the incentive to use coercive force to rob citizens is reduced. Plus, it's way easier now for someone to just I'm going to flee the country and take all my wealth with me in the form of Bitcoin. Because you can do that. And like I said, all you need to do is remember the seed phrase. Can you remember 20-something words?
Each of my kids will get one word. No,
if you can remember 24 words.
Chris is admit he's having 20.
Yeah, it was a joke. Chris just gives all it's part of the phrase, and he's like, "Okay, remember it when we're across the border." I was like, if you can just memorize those words.
Because my phrase will be, Andrew made me buy a bunch of Bitcoin for no money.
You don't pick the words.
I was joking, Andrew.
But if you just choose to memorize the words, you can walk across the border, go create a new wallet over there, recover it using those words, and you're now all your money is in the new country for you to use as you desire.
It is an easier in countries where people have people believe in Bitcoin, which is most of the countries across the planet now at this point. It's easier to do Bitcoin for exchange of money than it is anything else.
Well, it's instant settlement too. People don't realize this, but when you use a credit card, that's not settled the same day.
No.
That's a long process. And right now with Bitcoin, you can settle it same day and there's no refund. So you don't have to worry about the chargebacks that scammers do. But okay, ratings. What did you guys think of this book? It had Bible verses, Chris. What are your thoughts?
You don't need to call. I'm about to drop the rating because you're just being like
this. Gosh.
I'm going to let Will go first.
Okay, so I enjoyed the book a lot. I would give it a 3 out of 5 simply because I was hoping for more detail because obviously as through this discussion, I'm still confused. But I did appreciate the definitions of money, fiat money, the corruption of money. I really enjoyed those sections. So it was a good read, and it was very short. So I liked it.
That it was short, concise, to the point, good history of money, especially for those that don't really know what money is, defines it. I'd give it a 4.
I'd give it a 4 because of what it's trying to do. It's not trying to be technical. It's trying to tease people in with the moral principles. And I think
I had to take points off because Andrew oversold it.
I didn't oversell shit. Also, this is the first time I read it. Yeah.
He oversold it. He didn't sell it at all. He said, this is a book on our podcast. Read it, you jerks. That wasn't selling it. If that's overselling it, Will, then even putting a book in the podcast list is overselling it.
At this point, Will, you oversold Dune, okay? Just kidding.
Yeah, Will, he's like dropping the rating. He's dropping the rating. I bought the stupid trilogy now. Thanks, Will.
Yeah, I do like it, but that was a joke. I give it a 4 out of 5 too, just because it is really good at going over what it sought to talk about.
So overall rating of 3 2/3 stars from the podcast.
Yeah,
that's a solid score.
So.
Now, what is our next book, you guys?
Oh, it's the
Hideous
Strength. Yeah.
Hideous Strength. Oh, I lost my vision.
The one that I read accidentally instead of this one.
Oh yeah, I forgot you did that one first. Well, you know what, Will? At least you were ahead of the game for once.
Yep, for one time.
And you did read Dune already, so you don't, unless you're rereading it.
I'm not going to reread that book. No, I'm still trying to get through all 6 books. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
so look forward to that. Dune
that's going to be next week.
Dune. The Hideous Strength.
Yeah, the Hideous Strength is next week because we postponed this one. Because
we didn't do a CHRILLCAST.
Yeah, we didn't do a CHRILLCAST. So I don't know. I don't have anything else. Thank you guys for watching Printed and Pressed. Go follow us on Twitter, YouTube, whatever. We're on everything, aren't we, Chris? At this
pretty much. I gotta upload some of our older episodes to Spotify. I'm a little behind on that, but yeah, we're pretty much on everything.
Okay, well, if you're gonna be able to binge
a bunch of Spotify episodes,
delayed Spotify episodes, if you really want to. But yes, tune in next week, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis actually wrote a complete book for once. So look forward to that.
Don't ruin the surprise, Chris.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Oh, yeah.
Since Andrew fails at ending this thing.